Thank you, Representative. I'd like to recognize the Subcommittee Chair of Oversight, Mr. Schweikert from Arizona, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for doing this. I'm from the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. I passed more trees here than I think I have in my state. I noticed you have no saguaros. If you'd like one, I'll send you one. But here's the great irony. I'm from the desert my whole life. Yet many of the problems you have are very similar to us. I represent a community with the highest inflation in America. And yet, Mr. Plugger, you were talking about the difficulty that has created in running the business and the production. So a couple of things I want to understand, because I'm desperate to also figure out what we can do policy-wise that's great for West Virginia, but also great for Arizona. It's just good American policy. In the last, let's do 2 years. In your opening statement, you talked about your cost of running the business. Can you give me like 30 seconds on where your cost drivers were and how much of it was also now your workers just desperately needing a salary change because they're getting poorer every day? When your salary doesn't go up as fast as your inflation, you're poorer the next day. And that's happening like crazy in my district. Matter of fact, my folks are almost 5% poorer today than they were a year ago. And I'm told rural America is every bit as brutal. First, tell me what's happening in just the cost of making the business work.
Well, cost of making the business work are rising in every way. Most notably, the biggest driver of that is the price of oil. Whether that be what it does to diesel fuel and oil products, or products that are made or derived from oil. Steel, plastics, anything like that. As the price of oil.
You run kilns.
Yes.
What does a big kiln end up consuming energy-wise?
Well, our kilns are driven by steam, and we produce that steam by burning the byproducts of the sawmilling process.
Interesting.
We burn sawdust, so we use biomass to fuel our kilns.
Interesting. And your wages, how much wage pressure? Because you mentioned it in the restaurant. I'm just curious in the lumber industry. What are you seeing in your wage pressures?
We have seen considerable wage pressure. I've talked to a lot of other business owners across the country especially depending on your location, some of them have seen their wage structure double from what it was 2 years ago. And again, you have to remember the prices of our products have not doubled. They have not gone up at all. In fact, they've dropped dramatically here over the last few months.
And is that because of housing, or you think an international slowdown? Is it your products that are being exported, or is it domestic?
It's both. It's due to lack of demand. Again, you need, for our products to do well, you need housing, single-family housing, remodeling to be doing well, because that's where our types of products are put, hardwood floors.
Okay, there's one off that I really want to ask you. Much of the hardwood, more elegant furniture manufacturing, design, production is no longer in the United States.
That's correct.
Any idea what we could do to get that type of production back in West Virginia again?
That's a very difficult question, sir, and the reason that most of that manufacturing left here was for cheap labor. And we face a situation where up until very recently, I could put lumber in Shanghai cheaper than I could put it in Chicago. With the freights. That's reversed itself somewhat here with ocean freights, but up until very recently that was the case.
No, I know I'm interrupting, but it's time is a tyrant here. Have you seen some of the new automation that's starting to happen in furniture manufacturing and some of the sort of the new computer-driven CNC type equipment?
Absolutely, sir, and it's fantastic equipment. But you have to remember that you're competing against a furniture plant in Vietnam where the average wage for that worker is probably $250 a month American.
Can we arbitrage it through doing equipment?
In my experience, I would say no. Because we've actually tried that ourselves with our own furniture dimension plant, and at the end of the day, we could not compete against that cheap labor. So cheap compared to our American labor or costs, that it's worth that extra cost to send that material overseas, have it processed, and send it back here.
Okay.
And that's why those American furniture companies have turned into design and marketing companies rather than manufacturers. They've contracted that out to foreign entities.
Okay, Tom, thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's actually would be an interesting side project, is if we could get energy, get young men back into the labor market, and the incentive to buy the equipment, how much of this could we actually move back domestically again?
Thank you, Representative. I'd like to recognize the